On Christmas Eve, my mom tossed my 6-year-old daughter's handmade gift aside and said, "I don't take gifts from the child of a loser." My daughter just blinked, no tears, no words. Then my son, all of 12, stood up and did this. The table went silent. No one dared to laugh. I should have trusted my gut and stayed home. But it was Christmas Eve, and guilt has a way of dressing itself up as tradition. I kept thinking maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Maybe my mother would smile when she saw the kids, maybe she'd say something kind. Maybe she wouldn't find a way to ruin it like she always does. I told myself it was for Ava and Mason, not for me. We pulled up to her house around 6. The lights were on, the driveway was full. Her new husband's truck, my aunt's beige SUV, a car I didn't recognize, probably one of my cousins bringing whoever they were dating this month. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, but I pushed through it. Ava had been working on her gift all week. She used a small cardboard box, glued glitter and stickers all over it, and wrote "Grandma" on top with a purple marker. Inside, she tucked in a beaded bracelet she made and a folded note that just said, "I love you," with a smiley face. She asked me to help her wrap it the night before. She even chose the wrapping paper, snowmen playing guitars. I let her. I didn't think it mattered. I should have known it would. Mason didn't bring a gift. He didn't say much at all. At 12, he's already learned that silence is safer in that house. But he watched. He always watches. Dinner was awkward from the moment we stepped inside. My mom gave me a quick hug like she was touching something cold. She told Mason he was getting tall, then turned to Ava and asked why she was wearing such a loud color. I stayed quiet. Ava just looked down at her red sweater. We ate ham, scalloped potatoes, green beans. My mom bragged about some trip she and Jim were planning. My aunt talked over her as usual. A cousin showed everyone his new watch. The kids stayed mostly quiet. I kept checking on Ava from across the table, making sure she was okay. She was nervous, clutching that little box in her lap. After dinner, while everyone was having coffee and wine, Ava got up and went to my mom. She held out the gift with both hands and smiled like her heart was about to burst. My mom looked at it, barely touched the paper, and pulled it open like she was unwrapping a used tissue. She lifted the box, opened it, looked inside. Then she laughed once, short and mean, and said loud enough for every single person in that room, "I don't take gifts from the child of a loser." I don't remember standing up. I don't remember if I gasped or froze or if my heart stopped. All I remember is Ava. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She blinked twice and kept holding the box out like maybe Grandma would change her mind. Like maybe she hadn't heard her right. That's when Mason stood. He walked slowly around the table, not looking at anyone. He picked up the jewelry box from where my mom had set it down like garbage. Then he looked straight at her and said, "This is why Dad left you." It was like someone flipped off the volume in the room. Everyone froze. Even the cousin's girlfriend, who hadn't said a word all night, looked up from her phone. No one said anything. No one knew what to say. Mason didn't wait for a response. He turned to Ava, handed her the box, and told her it was perfect. Then he turned and walked to the front door. Just like that. I followed. Ava followed. My coat was half on when I saw my mother's husband standing by the hallway, just watching. Not saying anything. Just watching. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't take dessert to go. We didn't owe them a thing. In the car, Ava held the box in her lap like it was something sacred. Mason stared out the window. About 5 minutes in, he said softly, "She's never gonna be different." I didn't say a word. I just drove. We stopped at a gas station on the way home and bought hot chocolate in styrofoam cups. They laughed at something the cashier said, and for a minute it felt normal again. But the truth was, I felt something shift that night. Something permanent. And by New Year's Eve, I'd made a decision. After what happened on Christmas Eve, I didn't pick up her calls. Not the next day. Not the day after. On the 27th, she sent a text. "Don't be dramatic. It was a joke. Kids are too sensitive these days." That was all she wrote. As if calling my daughter the child of a loser in front of a table full of people was something that could be brushed off with a half smirk and a blame the kid's defense. No apology. No mention of Ava. Just deflection like always. I didn't reply. I stared at it, let it sit in my stomach like something rotten, and then I blocked the number. Mason saw me do it. He didn't say anything, but I think he felt a shift too. When New Year's Eve got closer, I realized I had no desire to spend it anywhere near that side of the family. For the first time since I left my ex, I didn't want to keep up appearances. I didn't want to dress the kids up and pretend to smile while my mother quietly dismantled whatever piece we had left. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my dad. It felt weird at first, dialing him up like I was 15 again and needed a ride from a party. But when he picked up and heard my voice, he didn't hesitate. I asked if the kids and I could spend New Year's Eve at his place. He said he'd have to check with Dana, his wife, and then chuckled. "I'm kidding," he said. "Of course you can. We drove out to his place the next day about 2 hours west. I hadn't been out there in over a year. Last time I visited, Dana had made lasagna and taught Ava how to braid yarn dolls. Mason remembered. He asked if she still had that old popcorn machine. The second we arrived, it was like stepping into a completely different reality. Dana had made chili and cornbread. There were twinkle lights strung across the ceiling and a little craft table set up for Ava. Mason got to help my dad with the firewood, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in a while. He looked relaxed, like he could actually breathe. On New Year's Eve, Dana brought out a tray of tiny glasses filled with sparkling cider. She even put maraschino cherries in each one and called them fancy kid cocktails. My dad grilled outside in the freezing cold just to say he did. We played charades, watched something ridiculous on TV, and at midnight, Dana handed out pots and wooden spoons and told the kids it was a family tradition to make as much noise as possible. They loved it. Mason banged a saucepan like it owed him money. Ava yelled so loud the neighbor's dog barked. We were laughing, genuinely laughing, and I don't think I'd realized how long it had been since we'd done that. Just laugh without it being followed by some offhand comment to ruin the moment. After we put the kids to bed, my dad sat next to me on the couch. He said quietly, "I'm sorry for all the years I didn't see what she was doing to you." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That one sentence meant more than every forced holiday I'd ever spent pretending everything was fine. On the way home, Mason said that was the best New Year's ever. Ava agreed, still wearing the paper crown Dana had given her. For a minute I thought maybe the worst was over. But then on January 2nd the real storm began. A message came from a number I didn't recognize. "So now you run to your daddy when mommy doesn't clap loud enough for you? That's rich." That was my mother. No doubt about it. I didn't reply. I blocked that number too. But she wasn't done. My aunt called later that day, voice full of fake concern. She said things like, "Your mom's really hurt and she didn't mean it like that." Then she said something that sealed it. "You know how she is. You should be used to it by now." That line. Used to it. As if that made it okay. That week I started cutting ties. Not just emotionally but financially. For years I'd been helping my mom, groceries, cell phone bills, rent when she was short. I did it out of guilt, out of habit. She never thanked me. She acted like it was owed. But after what she did to Ava, I couldn't stomach another cent going towards someone who had so little kindness for her own granddaughter. So I stopped. She noticed fast. The messages turned cold, then furious. I ignored every single one. And strangely enough, Jim, her husband, didn't reach out. He didn't yell or try to guilt me. He didn't take her side. In fact, about 2 weeks later he did something no one else did. He called me. And what he said changed everything. When Jim's name lit up on my phone, I almost didn't answer. It was late, the kids were in bed, and I was halfway through folding a mountain of laundry. I stared at the screen like it was a trick. He had never called me before. Not even once. In 6 years of him being married to my mom, we'd exchanged maybe 20 words total. Usually about where to set the dishes or whether Mason liked football. He called again 2 minutes later. I answered. There was this long pause at the beginning, just air between us. Then he finally said he was sorry. Not on her behalf, he didn't speak for her. He said he was sorry for not saying anything at the table that night. He said he saw Ava's face and it had stayed with him. Said he kept waking up at night thinking about that moment. The way she just stood there. I waited for the catch. For the part where he'd ask me to let it go, to bring the kids by, to try and make peace for the sake of the family. But he didn't. Instead he said she went too far. And I should have stopped her. He said it again, slower, like he meant every word. It was the first time anyone from that side of the family acknowledged it out loud. I didn't know how to respond. I just told him Ava was doing okay and that Mason was still angry. He said he didn't blame him. Then he said something strange. Something that stuck with me. I don't always agree with how she treats people, but I've gotten used to keeping quiet. That sentence landed hard. It explained more than he probably meant it to. We ended the call not long after that. It was polite. Pause. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unraveling in his world too, just not in the way I expected. After that, I started hearing from him occasionally. Not often, just small texts asking how the kids were, if Ava liked books or puzzles, if Mason had a favorite sport. Nothing pushy. No pressure. It was strange at first, but not unwelcome. He was the only one from that side who hadn't treated Ava's birthday like it didn't exist. Because that's what happened. January 17th came. Her 7th birthday. We had a party, just the 3 of us. I made cupcakes with rainbow frosting and let her decorate the kitchen with construction paper hearts and stars. Mason gave her a handmade card that said, "You're the best sister ever," in huge block letters. We laughed, we danced, we played her favorite music. But I saw her keep glancing at the front door. Around noon she finally asked me, gently, if maybe Grandma had the wrong date. I told her no. She asked if Grandma was sick. I told her no again. She didn't ask anything after that. Just sat on the floor and started opening her presents. Quietly, carefully. Mason watched her the whole time, jaw tight. That night after she went to sleep, I cried in the laundry room. Not for me, for her. For the way she kept trying to find a reason to believe it wasn't intentional. 2 days later, Nicole, my cousin, sent me a message. Your mom told Aunt Sandra she skipped Ava's birthday to teach you a lesson. She said, Tracy wants to cut me off? Fine. Let's see how she does without me. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't surprising. Not really. But hearing it from someone else, seeing it spelled out like that, made it real in a new way. She had punished a 7-year-old child to get back at me. That was when I decided we were done for good. No more chances. No more explanations to the kids. No more guilt about saying no. 3 days later, Jim showed up at our door. He hadn't texted or called ahead. He just knocked holding a small gift bag and a card. Ava answered. She blinked in surprise and looked back at me. I nodded. He stepped just inside, said happy birthday and handed her the bag. Inside was a plush unicorn with glittery hooves and a card that said, to Ava from Jim, because you matter. She hugged it, said thank you, then just stood there holding it like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Jim didn't stay. He said he didn't want to cause problems, just wanted her to know someone remembered. As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway. Would you mind if I came by sometime? Just to talk? I said maybe. I didn't know what he meant. Maybe he just needed to vent like a man finally seeing through the fog. I had no clue what he was actually planning to tell me, and when he did, it changed everything. Jim texted first, asked if we could talk. He said he didn't want to come in if it made things uncomfortable, he just wanted a few minutes. I said fine. I didn't feel threatened by him. He'd always been mild-mannered, forgettable in a quiet kind of way, and up until recently, completely uninvolved. The kids were at their cousin's for a sleepover, so I figured it was as good a time as any to get the air cleared. He showed up wearing a jacket too thin for the cold, holding a coffee in a convenience store cup. He looked nervous. I let him in and sat down at the kitchen table. I kept it casual, didn't offer him coffee, didn't ask how he was doing. He sat, then went quiet. Looked around the kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. I waited. Then he started talking. It wasn't what I expected. He told me that things between him and my mom had been getting worse for a while. That the night we left Christmas Eve, she didn't speak to him for almost 48 hours. She blamed him for letting me embarrass her. She accused him of being soft. And when he suggested she apologize to Ava, she snapped. Said I was raising my daughter to be weak. That girls like that grow up to be problems. His voice cracked a little when he repeated that part. I believed him. I could picture her saying it. He said he knew something was off for years, but he'd convinced himself it was just her way. But Christmas Eve shook him. And watching me walk out with both kids, without yelling, without losing my temper, he said that did something to him. I thought I understood what he meant. That maybe he was realizing the relationship he was in wasn't what he wanted. That maybe he wanted to leave. I assumed this was him trying to build a bridge to say he was done enabling her. I thought it was about guilt. It wasn't. What he said next caught me completely off guard. He looked me in the eye and said, I think I admire you more than I ever admired her. And sometimes I wonder what life would be like if I had ended up with someone like you. I blinked. At first I wasn't sure I heard him right. I asked what he meant. He didn't hesitate. You're strong. You take care of your kids without leaning on anyone. You don't let people walk all over you even when it costs you everything. It's rare. I felt my whole body tense. He kept going too quickly. Said that he knew it sounded crazy, but he'd never felt seen in his marriage. That my mom made him feel small. And being around me, seeing how I parent, how I handle things, it reminded him that there are women who don't use cruelty as a weapon. He said he didn't expect anything. He just wanted to be honest. Then he said it. The thing that made my skin crawl. If I had met you before her, I think my life would have turned out better. I stood up. He did too, immediately said he was sorry that he'd overstepped. That he wasn't trying to make things weird. He promised he'd never bring it up again. I told him to leave. He nodded, said he understood and walked out without another word. I locked the door behind him and just stood there. For a long time. Processing. This man, my mother's husband, had just sat in my kitchen and implied he wished he were with me instead. Not in some vague what-if kind of way. He said it outright. And the part that disturbed me most was how sincere he seemed. Like this wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was something he'd thought about. I didn't tell the kids. I didn't tell anyone. But that night I blocked his number. I wasn't scared of him, but I felt like a boundary had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. And whatever fragile connection I had to that side of the family, even through him, was officially over. The next morning I called my dad. I asked him if the offer to come to Raleigh still stood. He He said yes before I even finished the sentence. I told him I was ready. It was time to start over. Somewhere new. Somewhere clean. And this time I was leaving everything behind. We moved on the last Saturday of February. The day was cold but dry, one of those rare southern mornings where the sky hangs low but doesn't cry. It felt symbolic, like the world had already exhausted its tears, and we were driving straight into the aftermath. I had one goal in mind: make a clean cut. No lingering threads. No guilt. No more checking my phone wondering what passive-aggressive message would come through next. I didn't even tell my mom we were leaving. My dad rented the U-Haul. Dana packed sandwiches in a cooler. Mason took charge of organizing the boxes in the back of the truck like it was a puzzle he needed to solve. And Ava insisted on bringing all 5 of her unicorns in the car with her, buckled in with a scarf. By the time we pulled out of the driveway, the sun had started to rise. I didn't look back. I had no desire to see the neighborhood or the mailbox or the windows that had kept us boxed in for far too long. The apartment in Raleigh wasn't huge, but it felt like air. The walls were light gray, the windows wide, the view green even in winter. There was a park just a few blocks away, a grocery store down the street, and a school Mason could walk to. The first night there, we slept on mattresses on the floor, eating grilled cheese and watching a movie on my laptop. The Wi-Fi wasn't even hooked up yet, but the kids were giggling like it was a camping trip. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in the apartment didn't feel like tension. It felt like peace. Dana came over the next morning with new towels and a shower curtain. My dad hung shelves. I caught him later standing in Ava's room, staring at the wall where she taped up a drawing of our little family. Just me, her, Mason, and Grandpa. No grandma. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. But of course the peace couldn't last untouched. 3 days later I opened my email and saw her name. I'd blocked her everywhere else. Text, social media, even through Mason's school app because she once messaged his teacher pretending to be me. But I forgot about the email tied to old documents and subscriptions. There it was, plain and blunt. You'll regret turning your back on your family. No hi. No love. Just the same message she always used. Fear disguised as authority. I didn't reply. I stared at it for about 30 seconds, closed my laptop and went outside to sit on the porch. 2 days later another email arrived. Different address. No subject line. This one read, Jim told me what he said to you. Don't flatter yourself. It was like a punch. Not because of the content, but because it confirmed what I suspected. He told her. I didn't know how much he confessed. Maybe he told her everything. Maybe she dragged it out of him. Maybe he confessed in guilt, or maybe she saw it on his face. But either way she knew. And her response wasn't anger toward him. It was to humiliate me. There was something deeply twisted about that. The man she married tells her he wishes he'd been with her daughter instead, and she uses it as ammunition against me. I blocked that email too. I called my dad that night and told him the last of it. He didn't say much, just said if she ever shows up you call me first. I didn't expect her to. She doesn't like to get her hands dirty. But then a week later I saw him. Jim. He was standing in the parking lot of our new building, leaning against a silver rental car. Not his truck. Not his name on the tag. He hadn't texted, hadn't emailed, hadn't called. Just appeared. I stood at the kitchen window and watched him. He didn't move. Just stood there. Like he was waiting to be invited. My stomach turned. Mason was in the living room playing a game. Ava was at school. I didn't tell him. I didn't move. I just watched the clock. 21 minutes later he got back in the car and left. I didn't hear from him after that. Not a text. Not a note. Nothing. But that visit, silent as it was louder than any of his words. He didn't come for an apology. He didn't come to talk. He just came to see me. Or maybe just to see if I would come to him. I didn't. I had already decided something weeks ago and I held to it now. I was no longer someone people could circle back to. I wasn't a safe zone for other people's guilt. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the balcony and watched the streetlights flicker on. Mason came out and sat next to me. He didn't ask why I looked tired. He just handed me one of the cookies Dana had dropped off earlier and leaned against my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. And in that silence I felt something shift. Not fear. Not sadness. Power. Spring came fast in Raleigh. The air softened, windows stayed open longer, and Ava started leaving her shoes on the porch instead of by the door. The apartment slowly turned into a home, not all at once but in bits and pieces. A vase from Dana, a crooked bookshelf Mason insisted on building himself, Ava's art taped on the fridge. The life we had before started to feel like a story I'd read once and barely remembered. I didn't unblock anyone. Not my mother. Not the aunts or cousins who once decided she didn't mean it was a valid excuse. Not Jim. Especially not Jim. But that didn't mean they were done with me. In April, Ava's school hosted a spring concert. She was singing a short solo and she'd been practicing it for weeks. She asked if she could invite Grandpa and Dana. I said yes. They came early, brought flowers, and clapped like she was on Broadway. Ava beamed. When we were walking back to the car, Mason tugged my sleeve. "There's someone watching us," he whispered. I followed his eyes. There, parked across the street in a car I didn't recognize, was Jim. Window cracked. Sunglasses on. Just sitting there. I didn't say anything. I put my arm around Ava and kept walking. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need him. Later that night I got an email. A U one. Different address again. I miss them. Just let me say hi. I won't cause trouble. You know I'm not like her. I deleted it without reading the rest. That was the last I heard from him. It was around that time I started therapy, not for the kids but for me. I realized I'd been so focused on protecting them, I hadn't fully dealt with what growing up under her control had done to me. I told the therapist things I hadn't told anyone. About the way my mom used money to trap me. About the way she twisted love into guilt. About how long I lived thinking I owed her something just for existing. The therapist asked me what I wanted now. I said peace. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a dramatic reunion or some late-life apology soaked in self-pity. I wanted mornings that didn't start with dread. I wanted my daughter to grow up never wondering if she was hard to love. I wanted my son to keep that quiet strength without having to carry the weight of a war he didn't start. So I stayed quiet. I never responded to my mother again. Her birthday came and went. So did mine. I didn't send a card. I didn't post a family photo. I didn't explain my absence to anyone. And slowly the noise died down. That summer we went to the beach for the first time in years. Ava built a sandcastle so big people stopped to take pictures. Mason finally smiled without looking around first. And I sat under the sun thinking, this is what a real life feels like. Not perfect, but free. I don't know where Jim is now. I don't care. My mother probably tells people I turned out ungrateful or mentally unstable or cold. That's fine. Let her. I've stopped chasing people who only love me in pieces. And if one day she knocks on my door hoping for one last performance, she'll be met with the same thing I never got from her. Silence.